We're ready to begin this evening. This week, we've got Rob Schwarz. We're going to talk about being friends. Let me just tell you real quickly, this is a chapter from the book. It says, in a world where half our marriages fail, having a marriage built on the foundation of friendship doesn't sound like such a bad idea. And so we're going to talk to Rob about that, about being friends and how that has played a role in their marriage. Before we do that, let's have a word of prayer, and then we'll get into our interview. Dear Father, we are so thankful that as husbands you teach us so much about what our relationship in the church is like through human relationships. Father, we know that your Son is the perfect husband to the church. And Father, we pray that we will understand the example that he set for us, the way that he taught us so much about relationships, about respect, what we'll talk about tonight, friendship, and how that works, how it benefits a relationship that we have with our spouse. Father, we want to be better. We know that we can be better. I pray that you will challenge us each day to see the opportunities to improve and to take advantage of those so that we can be shining lights in this world where many marriages are failing, many marriages are just simply people living together as roommates, but they're not really united and one. We want to be one so that we can be that influence in the world that you need us to be. Father, give us what we need, give us courage, give us strength as we accept the challenge of your word and the ideas that you present to us about how to be the perfect husband. In Jesus' name we pray, amen. Well, we have been going through and got a few questions that we've been asking each week. So I'm going to start with one of those with Rob. As we talk about being friends, how did you and Sandy meet, and how long have y'all been married?
When I first met Sandy, I was sitting on a bus with my buddy, just like this, just sitting here, and her best friend got on the bus and were walking down toward us, and I just was like, and I look over, and David, my buddy, is like, and I'm like, hey, wait a minute. There's two girls there. Which one are you looking at? And
you got to sort that out. You can't go to the same
this
one.
Could be a problem. And he said the girl on the left, and I said, good, because I'm going to marry the one on the right. And he hit me. He punched me hard. And he's like, you don't even know who that is. And I said, I know, but I'm going to marry that girl. And so that's how we met. I actually didn't even meet her that day. Later on, as we were riding the bus to Votech a few weeks later, she got on the bus again, and mine was the only seat left. And so she said, can I sit here? Uh-huh. Yes, so that would be good.
How many people should beat away to keep that seat?
There was a guy under the seat over here that was, yeah. So I asked her out shortly after that. And we have been married 36 years now.
Tell me, I think it's of interest to people here. Tell a little bit about what your relationship with her went through to get to the point to where y'all got married.
We met when I was 16. I just got my first car. Had a crazy first date. I never thought I'd see her again after that date. But later she said it was the most interesting date she could ever imagine, so she had to see what was in store, from there. So she went out with me again. But I wasn't a Christian. I grew up Catholic, and so my whole religious perspective was different. I was pretty fed up with the Catholic Church. I knew things were not biblical. I knew they weren't right, and I kind of was done. And when we were dating, shortly after that, she said, would you go to church with me? And I was like, church? I tell you, boy, I've had enough of that. It just wasn't, I didn't respond very favorably, and so she kind of, okay. Well, she went out with me again, and then she asked again, and I thought, here it is with this church stuff again. This must be important. But I knew something was different about her immediately. I knew she was special. So I said, well, what is it about the church that's so important? And then she's basically said, well, it's all important. And I said, okay, maybe I better go if this is important to her. So I said, okay. And so I went with her, and I'm used to, I don't know if y'all are familiar much with the Catholic Church, but there's a priest up there, and things are done the same thing every time. It's repetitive. There's the congregation chants back at the priest, or at least that's how it used to be. It's just very monotone, just very droll, and no emotion. And whenever the congregation of 400 people in Yukon came in and sat down, I'm used to like 50 or 60. I was like, whoa. And then they started singing. And I froze. I was like, well, what's happening? And she looked at me like I was losing it and said, what's wrong? And I said, where's all that music coming from? I don't understand. And she said, it's people singing. And I said, no, this has got to be some kind of super sound system or an orchestra or something. I've never heard anything like this. I literally got chills, and I still get goosebumps thinking about that. I said, I've never heard anything like this ever. And she said, this is just people singing from their hearts. And I said, I've got to know more about this. And so we started studying. And that's, kind of what we started doing together, was she would just show me scripture, which I didn't know anything about because we were told not to study. You don't do that. You go to the priest if you have a question. And so I started just really absorbing all this scripture. And so that's how we kind of started, she started sharing the gospel with me. Right away, she wanted me to know what God's will was. And I thought, well, there is something different about this girl. She's really looking out for me. Well, it came to the point where I saw where I needed to be baptized. And I said, well, this is not what I've done. This doesn't fit me at all. I need to do this. So I went to my parents. I went to my mom. And she said, absolutely not. You are not going to do that. What is going on with you? Why are you doing this? What's the problem? And I told her, I said, I found it in the Bible. Sandy's been showing me. And she said, you're not going to do that. Not if you want to live in this house. And I said, oh, okay. So I just backed off and didn't say anything to Sandy. I was embarrassed. My mom says I can't do it. I'm 16. So I just was quiet. And after a while, she asked me, what's the holdup? You know what you need to do. Why aren't you doing it? And I said, well, I'm ashamed to say, but my mom says I can't. I think she'll kick me out of the house if I do this. And I don't make enough money at this donut job to live. So what does this young woman do? She makes some phone calls, and before long she says, 3 families from the church will take you in. If you want to do that, that's your decision, but you won't be on the street. You'll have a place to lay your head. You can pick. And I thought, who is this girl and who are these people? Why would they do that for me? I was baptized that night, along with her brother. I was like, okay. This is something like I've never seen or heard before, but I've got to obey the gospel. If they're that willing for me to go to heaven, I've got to do my part.
I think that's a tremendous story. Talking about friendship and really showing care and concern for each other. There was no doubt that you knew that she cared for you in the best way she could. One of the things that we read in the chapter tonight, it says, not unusual for young people to say we can't date because we are such close friends. Why do you think that may be a mistake, Rob?
Well, I think that if you don't consider the person that you're dating to be your friend or possibly your best friend, I think you're missing out on the best relationship that you could ever have. And I had best friends growing up, buddies, and I had some friends that were girls that I really was close to, but nothing like the friendship that Sandy and I have developed. It's just better than any friendship that you can imagine. And Andrew kind of followed along that. I think we talked about this the other day. Andrew and Darcy dated, well, they weren't dating for years. They were just friends. And we kept saying, are y'all going out on a date? We're not dating. We're just friends. And they really built a friendship up for quite a while. And they were in high school just like we were. And she wasn't a Christian. And so Andrew came to us and said, you know what? I really like this girl, and I think we want to start dating, but she's not a Christian. Well, her mother had made a promise to God when we were dating that if I didn't become a Christian, she wouldn't marry me. She didn't tell me that, but she said if he's not a Christian, then I will one day, before we ever get to that point, I will break it off because I'm not going to marry a non-Christian. So we told Andrew that story, and he knew it before. He promised God the same thing. And God worked it out where they studied and Darcy became a Christian, and now they've been married for 10 years. So I think that is the best foundation you can have.
How many of y'all started with a friend and talked him into marrying you? I got to raise my hand. So it does work. It's a good foundation. What do you think are some of the best things that create that foundation for marriage and friendship?
Well, I think that true friends really want what's best for you. So doing things that you like together, I think that's what we did. We didn't have any money, obviously, so we did a lot of things together, like we read the Bible together. To me, that was awesome because I was learning things that I didn't have any idea about. I thought God worked through the priest, and you just had to get it from there. So we did Bible study dates. We took walks in the park. We just tried to build that friendship. She would even come when I worked at the donut shop, and she would sit till I got done, and then I had to deliver donuts to another donut shop, and she'd go with me and help me. And this was kind of late at night, 9 or 10 o'clock. And so she'd do that so I didn't have to stay out so late, and so she was always there, and I tried to help her. When she worked at the drugstore, I'd go up and sit with her and help her do that too.
Very good. What are some of the best things that you and Sandy did to cultivate your friendship before you were married? I know we've talked a little bit about your spiritual bonding, but what were some of the things that you did that helped you most to develop that friendship?
I think that working together with other couples was a big thing. Double dating, spending time just hanging out with other couples. There were people at church that I didn't know until I became a Christian, and we would do devotionals. We even went on a teen retreat, which I had no idea what that was. But I really liked it. I thought, this is awesome. This is where people get together to encourage each other. I've never experienced anything like that before. So just being with other Christians, being friends with them and learning how to be a better Christian just made us better friends, I think.
Good. A lot in this chapter is focused on learning to listen. And it talks about active listening. Active listening is the idea of repeating back what someone has said to you so that you are understanding and clarifying, am I understanding what you're saying to me? How important is listening, do you feel, to creating authentic friendship in your marriage?
It's really probably one of the most important things you can do. The book talks about being a fixer. Don't be a fixer. I tried that, and I didn't get it for years. I would just listen just enough to hear what I thought I needed to hear to fix it, and then we could move on. And
I hear the problem, now I'm ready to solve.
Before she even finished with the problem, I was already on the fix. And they don't like that. Wives don't like that. It doesn't work very well when they don't get to finish expressing their concerns. But I was already ready with the fix, and I just was like, let's move on, let's get this done, fix it. That's not being a good listener, not listening and repeating back. I didn't even let her finish. I wasn't going to repeat it back because she didn't even get to finish. So active listening is extremely important, being able to take the time. And if you're already talking when she's still talking, that's not very respectful. You're not really listening.
Yeah. Or if you're thinking about your response, guess what you've stopped doing?
Listening.
Oh, I got to defend myself. You've shut your ears down. You've started your mind. You're not listening at that point. I think it's one of the things as men that we suffer from a lot in marriage. Our wives want us to hear what they're saying. That's the way that they connect. If you see women who are together, they like just talking about all sorts of things, whether it has a purpose or not. That's how they connect with each other. That's how they connect with us. And so a lot of times we get in fix-it mode. Well, if you just do this, it would take care of the problem. Now, that's not what they want. They don't want us to fix the issue. They want us to hear it. They want to be able to share with us. They want us to be able to do that. So,
best thing to do is keep your mouth shut.
And nod. Yeah. Yes.
Well, you can't hear if your mouth's working, right? You have to close your mouth to open your ears.
Yeah.
So.
And engage with them. Give them the opportunity to share.
Can't be looking at the TV.
Honey, you can talk to me. Just scoot over a little bit so I can see the game.
Or on your phone. You can't be on your phone. Eye contact is important.
Do y'all have any ideas on listening? Do you have any input of things that you've learned that have helped you become a better listener in your marriage?
Mason shaking his head, yes.
Tony?
Make sure it's in a private setting and the kids are away playing, because you've got to give her undivided attention.
Very good. Exactly. Mason?
I use that pause button a lot.
You don't put the remote down, you just
I
pause.
because everything's run through a DVR, you pause it.
You can come right back to where you were.
If you have to go to another room, you can do that. And I think that's important, because you're showing her that, I'm going to focus on you now. So.
Back in my dad's day, it was the newspaper. I was like,
Some of these guys are like, what?
yeah.
What is that?
How old was that?
What do you think makes honesty and trust? He goes through some characteristics that are really important in friendship and building that friendship. And I'm talking about honesty and trust. Why do you think that's so important to friendship? And why is deception so devastating?
Well, trust takes time to build. I mean, I kind of trusted her right when I first met her. But she just had that air about her. She was a trustworthy person. But normally trust takes time. You don't just trust somebody with something or someone until you know them. And honesty builds that trust. If you're honest with someone, then they're like, oh, okay, well, they're playing straight. I can trust what they're telling me is true. If you're dishonest, or if you've been, misled by someone, then that just ruined everything. If you've trusted someone and then suddenly they've lied to you or did something deceptive, then it just blew everything out of the water. And so everything that you've worked for is gone. So one little thing can ruin years worth of trust. So, to continue to build on that trust, you have to be truthful, always.
Yeah, if you break that trust, it takes a long time to get it back. It does. It's not, okay, you reconnect and you start where you were. You kind of start back sometimes towards the beginning of that and work back up, because trust is so important in a marriage. And honesty. Deception is really, really difficult. It creates an environment where there are things that are hidden. And this is supposed to be a close relationship. I mentioned in my prayer about how much we learn being husbands in our relationship with God as well. It's the driving thing that drives us away from God, and it's the driving thing that begins to deteriorate trust and honesty in a marriage, is trying to deceive. I won't not tell her the truth, but I'm not going to volunteer anything that she doesn't ask about. Well, that's it's kind of the same thing, isn't it? If you know that you don't want to share something because you know that she's not going to approve of it, or it's not going to help your trust in your marriage, then it's not any different. It's keeping it hidden, and that sort of hidden thing begins to push you apart in some ways. So.
Well, and you'll be benefited by their wisdom. I mean, Sandy has shed new light on situations over the years countless times. When I'll say, I've got this issue with this or whatever, what do you think? And she'll come up with something that never crossed my mind. And it's amazing. That's a great idea. Why didn't I come to you with this before? So I've learned that, I need to bring her in on a lot of different things. She's got a viewpoint that really is something I hadn't thought of.
In the book, he brings out a book called His Needs, Her Needs, which is a really good book by Willard F. Harley. And he talks about the top things that men need and the top things that women need. And guess what? They don't really coincide much. Here are the top 5 needs of women: affection, conversation, honesty and openness, financial security, and family commitment. Men desire sexual fulfillment, recreational companionship, an attractive spouse, domestic support, and admiration. Guess what? None of those 5 are the same. So, one of the things that honesty and openness does is say, hey, look, I feel differently than you do, and it's okay to feel differently. I have different needs than you do. If you don't talk, if you aren't honest and open with each other, then why doesn't she have the same needs I do? Why doesn't he have the same needs I do? It creates confusion in the marriage a lot.
Resentment.
Yeah, and resentment. Because your needs aren't being met, but unless you tell them what they are, then they don't know. If you don't give your wife an opportunity to tell you what her needs are, then how are you going to know to meet them? How are you going to know how to meet them? Or even what they are? So it's important. I think this idea of creating friendship and having honesty and trust there is really important to understanding each other. And the more you understand somebody, the closer your friendship usually is with them. They can be very different than you, but you create a bond by sharing and having that sort of openness. And so I think it's very important what you're talking about. Are there any scriptures that you think of that have taught you the value of friendship in your marriage?
Well, I was just talking to the partner I have in my business the other day about this thing. We talk about our wives a lot, and I try to get him interested in coming to church and in studying. He's not a Christian, but he grew up Catholic too, so we have a lot in common. And we're similar personalities. We're very picky about things, and we can just be obsessed with certain things. And so I mentioned something about this class, and we've been talking about this while we work. And I said something about, would you give your life for your wife? And he said, in a minute. I'd do it in a minute. And, John 15:13 says, the greatest thing is to lay down your life for a friend. What husband wouldn't do that? And he said, I would do it. And I said, you'd do it once. And he looked at me, and I said, that's the kind of thing you'd only do once, right? If you laid down your life. How valuable is that? Have you ever had to do that? No, you're still breathing. So wouldn't it be more important to try to be better every day than just say, well, I'd lay down my life? So that's kind of been one of my favorite ones, just because the different look at it instead of laying down your life is, we'll try to do better than that. Try to do something daily. Jesus said that if you're my friend, then you'll obey my commands. So that's really what friendship is. John 11:35, when Jesus was coming to Lazarus, when he was in the tomb and he had passed away, Jesus wept. And I think about that one. He knew he was going to raise him, but he still wept. He loved him. So I think we need to love that way. I think we need to love enough to weep. That says a lot. And then the last one was, a friend loves at all times, Proverbs 17:17. All times. Not just when it seems convenient or when you think it might benefit you, but all the time.
Isn't it easy to commit to doing something that we're rarely going to be asked to do? I'd lay down my life for my wife. Say that 5 times real quick. Life for my wife. Sure I would. But earlier in the book, in one of the chapters, he said, but what are you doing each day? Are you giving them the time that they need each day? Are you giving them the attention that they need each day? Isn't that harder? It requires a lot more. Like Rob's saying, maybe one time you'd have to give your life. But what are you doing each and every day? And I think some of these verses help focus on that. Any other verses y'all can think of that you think apply to this idea of friendship in marriage? I like the ones that Rob has mentioned, John 15:13-14, then Proverbs 17:17. That's why I think at the beginning of this chapter, the guy said, isn't it a good foundation? Isn't it helpful to have your best friend in your marriage so that you're there to support each other, so that you're there to love no matter what's going on, good times, bad times? I mean, that's, for better, for worse, for sicker, for health, richer for poorer. I mean, that's kind of what a lot of us probably said in our vows sometime. What does that sound like we're doing? We're committing, but we're saying, I want to be with you no matter what. And usually your best friend, that's the sort of commitment that you make. That's why they're a best friend, not just a friend. There's a difference in the quality of it. How did your children, especially when they were young and needy, put a strain on your marriage?
I was probably a little different maybe as a dad. Well, definitely a lot different than my dad. My dad was old school. He sat in his chair when he got off work till dinner time, and then he ate and he went back to his chair. And there wasn't a lot of interaction. Well, I didn't want to be that kind of dad. And so when my kids were little, we played a lot. We wrestled. I liked to body slam them into the waterbed and watch them come flying back out the other end. We did a lot of things together. That drove Sandy crazy, by the way, because that happened at bedtime. It's usually when we did that, and I'd get them all wound up, and they weren't ready for bed.
You did that to Sandy too?
Yeah.
That's one thing that ruins that friendship. You try to body slam your wife into the bed. That doesn't go over so well.
Don't do that. We played a lot of games, video games, board games, sports. We hunted, fished. But when it came to dealing with the kids, I was the hard nose. I was the, put the hammer down. Sandy was the softer one. And I guess it's supposed to be that way. But we agreed early on not to let the kids get between us. We decided that we were going to be united. If one of us said something, the other one was going to say the same thing. The kids were not going to be dividing us. And so we didn't let that happen. We didn't let them work us. And they tried. But we did not
That's
allow
their
that
job.
to happen. Yeah. So we let them know that our marriage was first. Right? Our relationship with God was first. Our marriage was second. And then they came after that. So we let them know that our marriage was more important, that we are together and are faithful to God, and then after that, then they came. That's sort of that came in anyway. But we let them know that that's the chain of command, and that seemed to help, I think, to let them know that we put that kind of emphasis on our marriage. So, we had one child that was easy. He was very simple to deal with whenever I had to get onto him, and which I did. He learned very quickly. He didn't have to do it more than once usually. The other one, not so much. Strong-willed, stubborn, I don't know where she got that. But they're different, and we had a lot more anguish, I guess you can say, or we had to really work a lot harder together on the second one than the first one. So they're all a little different, but it did cause some challenges. But we were able to, stick together and work through it.
Very good. Yeah, kids are experts at getting in between parents, especially if they sense a weakness. If dad's real soft and easy, right, Tony?
Yeah.
Tony's about to welcome in his fourth girl. So y'all pray for him.
Please. I need all of it.
They know how to drive that wedge. I think what you're saying is you build your relationship, and I've always felt this way, and then your children benefit from that. They don't benefit from you being separated and divided, but they benefit from you being together and united and supporting each other.
Yeah.
It may not be what they want, because they may not get the immediate thing that they're asking for, but it gives them a good example of what a marriage should look like, how it operates, how you support each other, and how friendship helps build a strong bond between two people.
Well, I think it's important, too, to show affection in front of the kids. I remember when I was a kid, which my dad didn't show much affection, but I did come home one day, and he was tickling my mom in the kitchen, and I still remember that to this day. There wasn't a lot of that, where you would see them being affectionate to one another. But Sandy and I are always affectionate. My mom was a hugger. I like to hug. And so we're always, when I see my kids, we always hug. And so I wanted them to see that growing up, that it's okay, it's okay for a guy to hug another guy.
Do you mind telling the example of your dad and how that transpired?
Yeah.
Because what you're saying is not the example that you had. So tell them the story about the sort of affection that your dad showed.
Well, he wasn't an affectionate person. And when we were little, I think he liked playing with us, but after a certain age, it was kind of like, and I was 7 of 8, so I guess when I got around, it was kind of like, okay, really. Already had 6 other ones of these, so I don't. But he just wasn't an affectionate person, and he wasn't a talker. If there was a phone call from my parents, someone died. That's the only reason they called after we got married. If I saw it on the caller ID, I was like, uh-oh, who's been sick? Somebody just passed away, otherwise they wouldn't be calling. So not much communication, not much affection. Well, when the grandkids came along, Dad loved grandkids, and he's like me, he liked the little ones, but he just kind of tended to change after they got so old. Well, our little granddaughter Maddie was over there when he was ill and playing. She wanted to get all the toys out and play. And so she was kind of making a mess, but we were kind of getting back together. And she threw an airplane and it hit my dad in the chest. And I thought, uh-oh. If he gets mad at that little girl, him and I are going to have a problem. And he laughed and he took that and threw it back and they played. Well, after everybody was getting ready to go, we always, lined up and we'd hug my mom. My dad would stay seated in the chair. So we were all up there giving Mom a hug, and my dad got up. And he walked over to where Mom was. And I'm like, what's he doing? I was just kind of froze, I'm thinking, what's happening? And whenever we walked up, I hugged Mom, and he's standing there, and he held his arms out. And I hugged my dad, like for the first time ever. And he was in his 80s, so that is not what I wanted to emulate. But it obviously had an effect. I was thinking, when we walked out of the house, I guess I had this glassy-eyed look, and I said, did that just happen? Did I actually get a hug from my dad? And Sandy's like, uh-huh. Yeah, but I think having the grandkids around softened him up a little, maybe.
They work on us. What are some of the other potential distractions you think that prevent you from maintaining a friendship in your marriage?
Well, work definitely gets in the way. We're both pretty busy. Sandy has 2 jobs. She's a seamstress, plus she does the Young Living, the essential oils. My business is busy. So we're constantly away from each other. Sometimes church work, that's more important work, but it does take up a lot of time. Kids, Andrew had cancer a while back. That was pretty dominating. Took up a lot of our time and thoughts and prayers. Katie recently just had her surgery. This isn't her first. She's had a gallbladder surgery. Parents, my dad went through cancer. Sandy's dad suffered Alzheimer's for 7 years before he passed earlier this year. So there's been a lot of things get in the way. Family, it's important. Of course, you do what you need to do. You take care of things, but you get home and sometimes you're just wiped out and all you can do is crash. And try to spend a few minutes together talking and, supporting each other. But it gets better, you get through those difficult times, but you're stronger for it. And we cherish the time that we have, even if it's just a few minutes here and there. And then when we get a chance, we get away, to try to spend time with just us.
What are some of the specific things you do to keep that friendship alive, like getting away? What are some of the things that y'all have done to get away and have a little bit of time together?
We love to golf. We're not good at it, but we're okay with that. We can hit the dirt, or as Kelly says, you hit the big ball before you hit the little ball. We do that a lot, but we have a lot of fun with it, and we play with some friends, and we just sometimes go down to Mustang. It's a little 9-hole course, and we have an hour we can play. The grandkids are great. They're very helpful. When Katie was in the hospital, she just gotten out of surgery. It was not going well. She was very sick and was really in a lot of pain, and she was throwing up. And then Andrew came. He drove in from out of town and brought the girls, and when they saw me, they came running. And I just love that. They come around, Papa, Papa, Papa. And I had one in each arm. And all that just melted away. All that stress and all that worry and all that pressure. So we spend as much time with them as we can. We've even taken them to Branson. We love to go to Branson. It's our little getaway. It's not far. We'll just sometimes go up there for a weekend or 3 or 4 days. We did take a road trip last year through Arizona, the Grand Canyon, Bryce Canyon, Utah, Wyoming, Colorado. We took a 10-day trip and we drove. So we spent a lot of time with each other in the car. And road trips are great because you can listen to books together. You can just talk. She also helps me with my business. Whenever she was working part-time during the year, she would be off in the summer, and she would help me lay carpet or whatever it was I was doing. And I help her with her business as well. So whatever we can do to be together, we just try to help each other, and that's what friends do.
Make it simple.
Mm-hmm.
Any impact that you feel like now that your children are gone, that empty nest season of life has had on your friendship or your marriage?
It's awesome. If we'd have known it was this cool, we would have kicked the kids out a lot sooner. We're really liking not having the kids at home. We love our kids, don't get me wrong, but it is just a really nice time of life where you don't have to wonder what the kids are doing or where they're at. I mean, you always think about them and you're always praying for them, but they're adults now. You know, they've got their own things going. And so we can focus on each other again, kind of like what it was before. And we can say, hey, you want to go get something to eat? Or how about we go do this? Or, you know, what are we doing this weekend? Let's go do something. You know, and we have pretty good role models. The Hills are good. They just take off and take trips. And I'm like, I like that. Let's do that. So, yeah, the empty nest is awesome. You guys are going to enjoy it.
We had a family retreat here a number of years back where Alan Martin, who was at OC, came down, and this question came up to him, you know, what's it like having empty nest? They had raised their kids and sent them out, and he said, it's kind of like a return to the Garden of Eden. So, something to look forward to for those of y'all who are raising your children and getting closer. What, if anything, did you and Sandy learn about the importance of friendship from other married couples?
We probably did this a little differently than most people. Back in Yukon, we wanted our kids to be good, faithful kids, and we wanted them to be obedient and respectful. So we looked around the congregation and found some friends that were a little older than us that already had kids that we liked their kids. And we got to know them better. And we actually went up to one couple in particular and said, this may be weird, but we like you guys and we really like your kids. They're very respectful. What are you doing? We want to know because we're going to start a family soon. Can we hang out and watch? And they're like, okay. You know, that is a little weird, but okay. And we just became good friends. We would hang out with them, and I remember it was when, what was it? Is it the music videos that used to be on TV? Was it MTV or something like that? And I remember sitting over there, and their kids had already gone to bed, and we were watching Thriller. I don't know why that memory stuck, but the Michael Jackson song. But we would just hang out and talk, and we would ask them questions. So what do you do when they do this? And well, you know, and they would give us great advice, biblical advice, because they're living it. They're raising those kids, and they're doing a good job. So we just kind of latched on to a couple of different couples, and we're still good friends. I mean, they're some of our dearest friends. So we just asked them for advice and asked if we could hang out, kind of latched onto them.
You remember anything that they gave you that really stood out to you?
One of the most important things that Barry Sterling told me was, he said, when you guys make rules, and there'll be rules, there'll be, you know, things that they can and can't do, be consistent. Don't change. And you be consistent with each other and with the kids. If she says it, you say it, and vice versa. And don't let them, you know, needle you into changing. They will try. They'll try to lessen their sentence if they've been convicted of something. They'll try to whatever, you know, but he said, do not give in. Do not let them do that. Whenever there is a law established, follow the law. Do not give in. Be consistent. And that's one of the
No parole or early release.
Solitary confinement is possible.
Any other advice you have for the young men in this class that you think is helpful for trying to be the best husband they can be?
Well, Sandy and I were talking about this just last night after you and I visited, and the first thing is to put God first and to live that way. With Andrew, I was fortunate that when he was 11, I started bringing him along on the jobs in the summertime. And I'd pay him a little bit of money, and he would, you know, he learned my tools, so he would go pick up tools and bring them to me, or pick up scraps or whatever. And during the day we would talk, and I would always talk to him about God and what God means to me, and how we can communicate with God, and we can talk to God about anything and everything. And so he and I had a special time together as he was growing up. I didn't have that with Katie. She didn't really have any interest in what I did. She's a girl, and she had her own little interest, but I should have found something. You need to find something with each one of your kids that you can spend that kind of time with. Because Andrew and I are much closer than Katie and I. And Katie and I, as she was growing up, had conflict. And we didn't have that basis. So find that, pray together before bed. We did that every night. After we wrestled, we would settle down and we would pray, and we would have them each say their own prayer. Don't work too much. I did that. When I was a mechanic, I worked during the day and I worked at night. I would do side jobs. I still did some of that as I was building this business. And don't do that. Your kids really don't care that much about money, but they care that you're there. And if you come home after they're in bed and they don't see you till the next day, you've missed out, and they have missed out. So spend time with them and be the spiritual leader. I wish if I could go back, I would be a better spiritual leader. I left a lot of that to Sandy. She would spur me on. We need to do a devotional. Oh, yeah. I should have been the one bringing that up and doing that. I shouldn't have had to have her remind me that we need to do that. So those are the things that I wish I could have been a little bit better at.
Nothing you can give your kids is worth as much as time. Because they're going to break whatever you give them, but they won't break you usually if you are investing your time in them. So, if you got one of the little handouts, once again, these are just similar questions to what we've done before on the challenge of being best friends. How would your wife rank you as a friend? Why not a lower number? Name 3 things you could do this week to rank higher in her mind. One of those things probably should be listening a little better. Which one would make her feel treasured? How could you go about making this change? What would be the first step? When and where could you begin this week? How committed are you to making this change to bring her more joy? If your commitment level is less than 9, go back to step 3 and be creative. Pray for God's help in becoming a Christ-like husband by becoming your wife's best friend. Remember, he who has friends must himself be friendly, Proverbs 18:24. So lead the way on that. And how well do you and your wife actually know each other? Close couples delight in getting to know each other intimately, and trust me, your wife desires that very much. That closeness, that affection, that intimacy is very important to them. Knowing and being known are essential to love. So take that challenge, do what you can this week to improve your friendship with your wife. And next week, Tim will be back, and we'll continue our series.